We're sitting with Jonathan Plutzik, principal owner of the Betsy Hotel in Miami Beach, Florida. Jonathan, thank you for joining us today. I know that the Amernet String Quartet has a large and very important presence here at the Betsy. The Beethoven project is very exciting. Tell me why it's important to have classical music in this atmosphere.
We're tremendously excited that the Amernet is going to be going on the road to Fort Worth to share the Beethoven project with that community. We care deeply, one, because we love the Amernet so much and we love this Beethoven project. But beyond that, we take our cultural activities so seriously here at the Betsy that being a catalyst for promoting and projecting music out of this community into others is something that really warms our heart.
Very happy to sit down with Jeff Briggs, the wonderful composer. We're going to perform at the Chamber Music Society of Fort Worth the most famous, one of the very most famous piano sonatas, the Apassionata. Tell me about how the Apassionata arrangement came about.
The impetus for arranging the piano sonatas actually comes out of a long-term love of the music. I have played most of the piano sonatas, not in a performance space, but on my own. And I had just been working on a lot of string music. And I decided, as an experiment, I was sort of in a place where I didn't know what to do next in my own creative life. And I often copy music the way they used to do to learn, you know. And so I picked up, I think it was Opus 26, which is a theme and variations. And I worked that one through, and I used virtual instruments in my studio, and it sounded really good. And I was discovering that the ranges of the instruments and you know, sort of the character of the parts seemed to fit string quartet really, really well. So, you know, I started looking around the net to see all the other arrangements that had been done of the Beethoven piano sonatas for string quartet, and couldn't find any. And so that raised my eyebrow a little bit. I thought, wow, this could be a really fun thing to do.
I know you work with the Amernet String Quartet very often, and you know the musicians extremely well. What can you tell us about the process of introducing or reintroducing the music to the quartet, and what was the feedback you got from the musicians?
I arranged the Opus 101, and at that point I invited the Amernet over to my apartment and said, hey guys, I got something to play for you, what do you think? And I played it for them, and I must say, the reaction was quite stunning. One of them said, wow, this is like hearing something that's just been discovered. And another one of them said, wow, it sounds like it was written for string quartet, you know? And so I said, well, maybe I'll do a few more of them. And at some point I lost all sanity and decided that I wanted to do all of them. So that's, you know, that's how it came about.
In terms of nuts and bolts, when you write for string quartet, especially if you have the music that's already created by the genius Beethoven, what were the main challenges in the Apassionata?
The Apassionata is one of those pieces that is clearly a piano piece. You know, I think by this time Beethoven had you know, discovered the new pianoforte and, you know, the pedal, and, you know, he was doing special effects, quote unquote, back for those days. So, you know, the real challenge was to try to take a piece that was specifically written for the new Hammerklavier piano and make it work for string quartet. One of the things is that string quartets don't have pedals. And, you know, so you have to figure out ways to sustain certain notes to get the effect of, you know, the pedal. Also, it's very the last movement of the Apassionata is very fast. You know, so I found that the best way to handle those kinds of things is to break up fast passages among the various instruments, so that they each have a little bit to do, which is not too hard. But, you know, when put together, it sounds quite magnificent, actually. There's a section in that piece where He's doing these arpeggiations that just travel up the keyboard really slowly, and it gets up to a really high point. And I really struggled with that, because that is such a pianistic gesture. But I think it worked out really well. I'm really excited to hear it.
Michael, such a pleasure to talk to you today. In thinking about the performance in Fort Worth, you guys have been there many, many times. You know the acoustics extremely well. What do you think you will need to do to make the performance your own, since this is obviously a piano sonata arranged for string quartet?
I think that the string quartet will help to bring out an additional dimension to some of these works, especially people who are familiar with these works. I think they'll hear things that they may not have heard before in the original piano version. We have 8 hands in the string quartet as opposed to 2. I think that certain figures, which may sound kind of monochromatic on the piano, we'll be able to sculpt them, or we're able to sculpt them so that become a little bit more interesting, and the listener might sit there and say, oh, I never knew that that was in the piece. And that's one of the reasons that we're very excited about playing these pieces.
The Amernet String Quartet plays a great deal of new music. Tell me, what is it like to have worked on the Apassionata?
It was eye-opening. It's a piece that we know so well from listening to recordings of great pianists, and really exciting to be able to play it in the string quartet. And of course, some of the writing is very pianistic, and so we've had to work technically to make it sound good on the string instruments. But it's very natural, actually. So many of these quartets that Jeff has so skillfully arranged work really well in the string quartet setting. Especially the slow movement of the Apassionata with the chorale in the beginning, it's very much lends itself to the string quartet.
When you work on the Apassionata, how do you treat the relationship between color and texture for the 4 instruments?
So the last movement of the Apassionata is probably the most challenging technically, just to the way it translates from the piano to the strings, and particularly in the 2 violins, there's a lot of running notes. And so we've had to work pretty hard on that. But it works very well, and in fact, it's really neat for us to have in our ear the sound of the piano and to try to imitate that on the violin and all the string instruments, but particularly in that passage on the violins. But then I think about when we play the standard Beethoven string quartets, there are, especially in the late quartets, times when we need to mimic. We feel that we should be mimicking a piano or some other kind of an instrument. So in a sense, it's very similar, our approach to these works.
This is a very special concert celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the Chamber Music Society of Fort Worth. What reaction do you hope your work elicits from the audience and the media?
I hope that the audience can view these works as standalone pieces. I hope that they hear it as new, undiscovered, or newly discovered Beethoven work.